This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. Not just making it on a mandate. Get it on, and welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark. Hard out, soft taco, Garrigus, coming from the home office in parts unknown. What's going on, Mark?
I'll tell you, I've been Zooming all day. I really wanted to come see you. I could have used a dose of in-person Adam Carolla, but like the viewers, we're going to either listen or get imbued with your wisdom from the audio. By the way, the number of people who don't understand the hard out, soft taco and think that it's some kind of a gender issue is surprising to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think people's minds tend to go there sometimes. All right. So we have what's on your mind? Where do we start?
Look, I think we've been talking about SBF. Gary will hit me if I try to talk about, is it Bankman-Fried, Gary?
Wow.
Did I do it?
You did it.
Yeah, once they get indicted, I know their name. They unsealed the indictment. They arrested him yesterday. I think we talked about it, Adam, that I didn't understand at all what he was doing, because it made no sense from a defense standpoint, because obviously he had a target on his back. I will say the one thing that is very surprising to me is the speed with which he was indicted. I've said before that the feds usually, some U.S. attorney told me this once, we move at glacial speed. And he was joking, but this was with speed out of the Southern District like I can't remember seeing. And the idea that not only do they have the wire fraud, which, by the way, was also apparently the name of one of his phone chat groups. That's what I would call a bad fact if I'm defending him. They got the lender fraud, and they've now, interestingly, they've got campaign finance fraud. Remember, we were talking about the donations, and apparently there was some bundling going on, or people were getting reimbursed. That's the allegations. And the SEC has weighed in, as well as the Southern District. And part of what my immediate suspicion is that they could not have moved this quick unless they had somebody who was actively cooperating. And that would be somebody at the highest levels. So I don't know if that's the woman who, what's her name, Ellison?
His girlfriend or his brother was, I don't know what his brother was up to, but I know his girlfriend was sort of into it.
Yeah, Caroline Ellison.
Wasn't he just kind of doing the New York Symposium like a week ago, kind of toast of the town?
And by the way, and was laughing about, joking about it. We played the video. I think it's astonishing to me that you think you're going to go into that situation with this monumental collapse or implosion in the financial markets, and and I believe he intimated that his lawyers were telling him to shut the fuck up.
It was so weird. He does a whole symposium. He's thanked at the end. He gets a big round of applause. Seemed very sort of upside down world to me. But whether it's Alec Baldwin or Bankman-Fried, no talking when the shit's coming.
When the shit's coming and you've been put on red alert, to paraphrase, actually it's an actual phrase, the two lawyers who have done the ad, I don't know if Gary can find it, but they say when the cops get you, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. That's their kind of motto for their advertising. That's taken from real life experience. It generally never helps. It's a rare situation where talking is going to get you somewhere. The interesting timing is I think he was supposed to testify in front of the Senate today, and instead is testifying, or is not testifying, while in custody. And I wonder if maybe the DOJ didn't have some concern about him testifying in front of the Senate and having the Senate kind of poison the well of his testimony, or let him off the hook on certain things. I don't think it's coincidental that he was supposed to testify and then he's indicted and he's picked up and taken into custody. I think I think those two things are linked.
Well, here goes the conspiracy theory, but he probably has a lot of info on a lot of politicians, or at least has talked to a lot of politicians, and it's a lot of stuff that's probably not going to bode well for those politicians, or at least be embarrassing, or what have you. So maybe that's why the DOJ acted so swiftly, because you went conspiracy, which, and by the way, you proved me wrong on so many occasions. I don't doubt you anymore. I was thinking legal. Is there going to be a problem if he testifies? And there's an argument that they poisoned the well, so to speak, and you have to do some kind of a hearing on that. And it just was unnecessarily going to complicate the case that DOJ knew that ultimately they were going to bring anyway. Well, I think the problem is he gave so much money to politicians who probably should have been regulating him and weren't, that it looks like a pay for play kind of situation. We have a video Mark was asking for, about 28 seconds long.
Oh, you got to shut the fuck up, and it's Shut the Fuck Up Friday, so review the script. What do you say when the cop first pulls you over?
Why'd you pull me over?
And when he keeps asking questions?
Not discussing my day.
And they ask more questions?
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
And if detained, what do you say?
I invoke the fifth.
And then what do? You
shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up Friday. Never answer questions when the cops ask.
Have safe holidays.
Tip of the day.
I love those guys.
I was going to say, they've gone viral in the legal community elsewhere, right?
I grew up, one of the many commercials I used to watch and screw up was Jacoby and Myers.
Right.
And I never knew that it was called Jacoby and Myers, because they go, here are Jacoby and Myers, and they just kind of ran it together. And I decided in my head when I was about 13 that there was some land called like Jacobia. I thought it was like a Jacobian Meyer, and I didn't know what a Meyer was. But someone in the priest, a church or something. He's a Jacobian Meyer. Listen to him. He's from a land of justice. And I somehow ran them together like I did Pia Zadora, who I thought was P. Isadora, not Pia Zadora, because they never put a gap.
Did you ever meet Pia Zadora?
No, and I never met a Jacoby and Meyer. But I still see the billboards for Jacoby and Myers, and I saw those commercials when I was in the 7th grade. I mean, so I don't know if their kids are taking over. Let me hit Audible here real quick. Oh, man. If you don't ride elevators and you don't pick airlines, you don't ride elevators for the music, and you don't pick the airlines for the movies. For audio entertainment, choose Audible, the home for stories told by the biggest stars like Ethan Hawke, Kerry Washington, Kevin Hart. Let your imagination soar. Incredible selection of audiobooks across every genre, bestsellers, new releases, celebrity memoirs, mysteries and thrillers, motivation, wellness, business, and more. Audible members can choose one title a month from their entire catalog, plus access to Audible originals and podcasts. Now you can even listen to Reasonable Doubt on Audible. It is Audible, right, Gary?
That's right. Let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, be inspired, or be entertained. New members can try it free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/RD or text RD to 500-500. That's audible.com/RD or text RD to 500-500 to try Audible free for 30 days. Audible.com/RD.
So what else?
I was thinking about the along the lines of what we were just talking about with the DOJ versus the Senate. And it occurs to me that last night I was watching MSNBC, and I forget the show, but I remember that one of the January 6th committee women was on there, Zoe Lofgren, the congresswoman from California. And they were being peppered with this idea of whether the January 6th committee was making criminal referrals to DOJ. And to her credit, although, she was wearing black and she looked like she could be a Supreme Court justice when she was talking. I don't know why that occurred to me. It's some bias of mine. But the interesting thing she talked about, which also reminds me about this, she talked about the fact that there's a separation of powers, which I think people tend to not quite understand from because it's been so long since you take civics. But the fact that the January 6th committee makes a criminal referral really is, at the end of the day, is not going to necessarily sway the Department of Justice one way or another. Department of Justice, just like anybody else, can watch the hearings. They can get the information. But they've got actually more tools at their disposal than Congress does. So this whole idea of waiting with bated breath to see if there's going to be a criminal referral is talking about exalting form over substance, is really kind of frustrating.
Criminal referral for Trump or for whom?
And others, like, one of the things that came out that's been reported this week is that Mark Meadows, who was a former congressman, then Trump's chief of staff, was texting, and apparently there are texts between him and scores. I don't know if scores is correct, but at least tens of sitting congressmen plotting what MSNBC describes as a coup. And I would assume that that's one of the referrals that the people are wanting to see. I just think, like I said, DOJ is going to do what DOJ is going to do, and the special counsel who they've appointed is going to do what he does. He's already issuing subpoenas and apparently moving at breakneck speed. And so they don't, a criminal referral, it was just kind of irksome that they're so fixated on it, is at the end of the day kind of a meaningless exercise, ultimately at the end of the day, because whether you refer it or not, the evidence you've developed is going to get over there, and they probably have all of it, they being the DOJ, and they don't need Congress to send it over on a silver platter. I mean, there's just much ado about nothing. I will also tell you that, as predicted, the Republican majority in the House is already talking about the various investigations and disbanding the various investigations. So we're going to have that in perpetuity as well. Be careful what you wish for. Then, yeah, I wanted to hear what you think.
Well, I mean, the thing about the January 6th thing is, if you said to me, we had this very significant, dangerous situation and we want to form a committee and we want to look into it, I would say, okay. But then you start cherry picking who is on the committee, and then you go, we don't want Jim Jordan on there. And it's like, why not? Because he's going to ask a bunch of questions about Nancy Pelosi, or why wasn't there Capitol Police, or he's going to want to know if people were informed before January 6th that there's a possible danger and stuff like that. So we don't want that guy on. We'll cherry pick this committee, and then we'll also cherry pick the subjects, because they say all the time, we have to have this committee so it doesn't have to happen again, but they don't look into what happened before January 6th, which would prevent it from not happening again. You can blame Trump all you want, but they didn't have an adequate security and police force there, and they were warned something's going on. I'd like to know about the FBI and how many informants they had involved and were on the grounds or were in the Capitol. I'd like some answers to that. I'd like to figure out what went on with the pipe bomb that was planted in front of the DNC, and who planted it, and who found it, and where is it, and how come we barely have any video of it? So if you want to give me a very broad totality of every aspect of that day, then I'm down with it. But and I want to know about the security, I want to know why that Capitol Hill policeman shot that woman in the face at point blank range. It's all on the table. And if we want to get into the nuts and bolts of all of it, then I'm signing off on it. If you want to ignore many aspects of it and cherry pick the parts you want to litigate, then it seems very partisan to me.
And my problem with it is that clearly everybody on that committee, everybody in Congress who was there on January 6th, are the arguable, ultimately, and I know it's a legal conclusion, but the victims. Since when do you have the victims conduct a legal inquiry at the scene of the crime? I mean, that in and of itself just doesn't make sense.
And no crossing, as you always said. We're just gonna get this 26-year-old chick to tell you a secondhand story about somebody who may or may not have been in the armored SUV that Trump lunged at the wheel. It's all sort of hearsay. There's no cross that would never hold up anywhere. Like, if you want to do it that way, then I'm not interested. If you want to do it in a bigger way where she could be crossed, where you had people from across the aisle, you had people, dissenters, people going, well, what about this? Or what happened to that? Then I'm all ears.
Right? I mean, you can take some lessons about our justice system, which is far from perfect. But one of the things that's great about it is you just put your finger on, is cross-examination makes all the difference in the world. Anybody can do the infomercial that is direct exam. What happened next? What happened next? My father used to say to DAs, I could train a monkey to do this. He couldn't say that anymore. Now it would be, I could train my granddaughter to do it, or my great-granddaughter to do it. But the fact remains that until you get on the cross and until you start to see, especially if it's a well-prepped cross-examination, you start to see that the truth is not as black and white as you usually think it is. There's an agenda. That's the whole idea of an adversarial system. And I'll give you an example still out, I think, Gary. I haven't checked today, but is the Weinstein jury still out?
Yes.
Wow. It's been a while, right?
Day 7 with just, by the way, I just saw a tweet from some kind of bitter LA Times person who apparently must listen to Reasonable Doubt because we talked about one of the juror notes. And apparently the Times, even though this is across the street from the building that they fled when they went down to El Segundo and got the hell out of town, didn't even know that the jury had asked questions, didn't even know that they were out there. And this guy is, I've heard from multiple sources. Yeah, when you were listening to Reasonable Doubt, the jury, by the way, and I love this, failed to notify the press. Well, if you're doing your job, you'd know it. I mean, right? How unbelievable is that? The jury had asked a question that I think gives, you never know when the questions come in. Let me just, it could be one juror who's voting for not guilty as opposed to 11 who are staunch, but you never know. But the question gives you some hope if you're the defense, because they're saying the jurors don't necessarily believe the other acts, the similar acts witness, and you get a jury instruction on that. But this was a very intelligent question because they said, if we don't believe the other acts evidence, can we still use that evidence to undermine basically the prosecution case and find reasonable doubt? So when they preyed on a couple of accusers who they don't believe, but maybe, and this is speculation, maybe they say, well, that story sounds a little canned or it sounds a little rehearsed, and boy, it's reminiscent of one of the charged victims, and I've got my doubts about that too, and can we use that evidence for that purpose? Unfortunately, I don't think that the jury instruction covers that. But boy, it's a highly intelligent question by doing the intellectual gymnastics to understand the burden of proof for uncharged acts and being able to use that inversely or the obverse for a charged act.
So let me make sure I understand this. So if you're saying this one witness seemed pretty, or victim, or whatever it is, seemed pretty credible, but then the other two didn't, now that makes me wonder about the one I think is credible?
No. So say if you've got three accusers, one of whom is Gavin's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin's wife comes up there and, by all accounts, sounded off the deep end in terms of rehearsed or acted. I mean, by all accounts, it was not a good performance. Now, those are the three. Say there's three counts, or say there's the three charged victims. They also brought in some other people who they did not charge their crimes for a variety of reasons, whether it was statute problems or they didn't want to cooperate or whatever else. But you bring those people in, and under an evidence code section in California, 1108, you can bring those people in to prove a motive, a signature, a time, or an identity. So they'll tell their story, and if their story helps the jury find for the accuser, the jurors can use that. Well, these jurors had gone one step farther intellectually. They said, hey, wait, we don't necessarily believe these people who aren't on the charge counts, but we want to use can we use their testimony to undermine Gavin's wife, for instance? Mm-hmm. And that's a highly intelligent, somebody who understands the burden of proof, who understands what's being charged, and they're asking some good questions there.
So,
are you 7 days? Yeah. 7 days. This jury has been out.
As a defense attorney, is that good news or bad news?
You're hard pressed to find some bad news there, but there's no way to divine it.
But it's academic because he's going back to New York to serve his time, right?
Well, except the highest court in New York now has voted to review that conviction. And ironically, my guess is they reverse that New York conviction. It's going to be on the same issue of what's called the other acts evidence.
Wow. So there's a possibility that Harvey Weinstein could be a free man in a year?
If he is acquitted, or if the jury hangs and a mistrial is declared, it's entirely possible that he is entitled to bail here, which he would not post immediately. He would wait and see what New York does. If New York reverses his conviction, then he'd have arguably could post bail on both coasts.
Wow. All right, let me hit Roman here. Almost half the men experience moderate to extensive hair loss in their lifetime. There's options available to help stop balding in its tracks. Roman, clinically proven prescription medication and over-the-counter treatments, all from the comfort and privacy of your own home. Plus, specially formulated shampoos and conditioners that fortify, moisturize, and make your hair look fuller. Just complete a free online visit. A U.S. licensed healthcare professional will help you find the best treatment plan if medication is appropriate. Roman ships direct in discreet packaging with free 2-day shipping. Starts at just $20 per month on a quarterly plan, and you get to save the hair you got with Roman. Right, Gary?
That's right. Right now, Roman has a special offer just for our listeners. Use this link to get 20% off your first order. Just go to ro.co/doubt today. That's ro.co/doubt for 20% off. ro.co/doubt for 20% off today.
All right, what else are we looking at, Gary?
Well, Gary, let's wrap up with the one that I get a kick out of. I don't know why, but I want Adam's take on this. And it was an employee who had an excuse, and the boss got into hot water. Do you know which case I'm talking about, Gary?
Oh yeah, this is the Olive Garden case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, run this down for Adam, and let's get his reaction before we close it up today.
Basically, a Olive Garden in Overland Park, Kansas. Recently, the manager came under fire because he said that if you call off, then you should basically go look for a new job. And if you have some sort of an excuse, like your dog died, that you should bring the dog to the restaurant and prove it.
Yeah, good.
Coming on the heels, by the way, of Elon Musk saying you want to work here, you got to come in, and that has caused a firestorm. If you haven't noticed as well, I don't understand what I understand. I employ people. I understand you employ people, but is that too much to ask? Have we entered a new age where you can't ask people to actually show up?
I think it was bad pre-COVID and then just got blown out of the water after COVID and lockdowns and telling everyone to stay home. I was talking to Dr. Drew this morning. I was standing outside the Glendale DMV. A lot of Armos, a lot of fans over there, Mark. And these guys.
They consider you Carolian,
Oh, yeah.
You're thought of as an honorary Armo.
Sonny did not pass his written test, but I'm going to file this under.
By the way, Natalia on that spike that you posted, about 100,000 views in no time, and that was quite the spike.
Very aggressive playing volleyball, but not good at the DMV taking the written test for either one of them. But I will say this, and I'm bringing it around to this. We are in the old guys club, and Dr. Drew can't, for the life of him, figure out why I would have to drag my son to the DMV on a weekday and make the appointment for him and force him to go and attempt to get his driver's license, which he failed at, and how that, kids these days. And I understand the part of life where you go, things have changed, Pops, and we're doing things differently. And, that's the difference between being able to use the smartphone and being able to use the old roto dial phone and all that. But not all new things are good things. And showing up to goddamn work is an old thing, but it's old like diet and exercise is old. It's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? And we have this new world order where it's like, oh, that's your grandpa's way of doing it. And I get it for many subjects, but not work, not diet and exercise, not many of the sort of staples of humanity that are tried and true. Showing up for work is important. And so what you end up having, because I experienced it. I would experience it when I would hire some young guy, like my nephew or something like that. And you would find out, this guy, where is he? He's not there. And my mind would reel, I'd go, I can't. And then I would talk to old guys. I always tell you, I talked to a lawyer who's partner at the firm, and he was explaining that his junior lawyer said he was going to take off and find himself for about 3 weeks, and then added, don't bother calling. I don't care if there's an emergency. I cannot be reaching. He was reeling. And then he'd do this whole thing. Oh my God, when I was 26 and junior at a law firm, I would have never, there's a lot of that. So I understand that the old school guys are now the bad guys because we're the guys that are demanding that people show up and be accountable, and euphemistically saying things like, I don't care if you have to bring your dog in, or exaggerating that way, but I'm all in on this guy. I appreciate him. I feel him. And if he gets canned,
he did.
I can get him a job over at Mark's firm. All right, let's bring it home.
Well, this is our last episode with the three of us for this year. So Merry Christmas. I'll see you Christmas Day.
Yes.
Happy New Year. And where are you going this week?
I'm going to be at the Rialto Theater in Tucson, Arizona, and then I'm heading off to Tempe and doing 4 shows there at the Improv. You can go to amcroll.com for all that. I don't want to forget about Geico. Do you own? Do you rent? Well, sure you do, and you work hard, and that's where Geico comes in. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your automotive policy. It's a good thing, too. So save a lot of do-re-mi and get going with Geico. Go to geico.com. Get a quote and see just how much you can save at Geico today. What do you got, Mark?
I'm just going to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas season, Happy Holidays if you don't celebrate Christmas, and celebrate with your loved ones. It's the best time of year.
Agreed. So, till next time, this is Adam Carolla for Mark Hard Out, Soft Taco Garrigus, saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.